please look it up?
I do.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Ms. Shaw, I just have a few questions for you.
Okay.
Would you please state your name and I'll spell it for the jury?
Loretta Shaw, Loretta-SHAW.
Ms. Shaw, how do you know Joseph and Jennifer Rosenbaum?
I met Jennifer at a wedding,
At whose wedding?
Lauren's.
And Lauren is given to Jennifer.
Jennifer and Lauren are sisters.
And how long have you known Jennifer?
Well, I met her in May of 15.
And did you know her before she became a foster mother?
Yes,
And did you ever meet the foster children that she...
one time.
Tell me about that time.
I went to a shower, and they were at the shower, and Layla came running and climbed up in my lap. And she sat with me most of the time during the shower. She would get up and go back to Jennifer and get her phone. And she would come back and climb in my lap, and she'd put it up to her ear and say, "Daddy, I love you." And she did that numerous times, just going back and forth.
Okay.
Just a bubbly, happy little girl.
Do you remember the date that was?
It was, I'm not sure, sometime in August, I
In
believe.
August of 2015?
Yes.
And how did they interact with Jennifer? How did the...
Oh, they was very loving on her.
Okay. And tell me, did you see any marks and bruises on these children?
No, and the youngest one sat in my lap most of the time, and if she'd have had any, I'm sure I would have seen them.
And did you see anything that would alarm you at all?
No, just a happy little girl.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cross.
Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning.
I just had one question for you. After that August date, did you ever see the little girls again?
No.
Thank you, ma'am. You can step down. You can
Okay.
Step on the back.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks. Raise your right hand, please.
I do.
You put your hand down, you put in your seat, and give us your name and spell it, please.
My name is Lauren Banks, Laurenbanks.
Ms. Banks, how do you know Jennifer Rosenbaum?
Jennifer and I met in 2010 off of Facebook. She's, from what I learned, my biological sister.
And were you raised together?
No, ma'am, we were not raised together. I was adopted at 10 days old prior to Jennifer even being born, and we never knew each other until the Facebook interaction in 2010.
And when is the first time you met Jennifer?
It was Jennifer's birthday in 2010. She had turned 22. I don't remember the name of the place that we met, but her and my now husband and one of his friends, we met together with a group of her friends. That way it wasn't awkward when we first met, since we had never met each other before and we were related.
Did there come a time where you became aware that Jennifer was going to foster children?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I believe it was Father's Day. She had came over to my house. I was at the time on bed rest, and she let me know then that she was interested in fostering children. It's something that she was passionate about since she was a foster child herself.
And did she show you any photos? Did she share any pictures with you?
She did.
And were you able, that summer, it's the summer of 2015, is that?
It was.
And that summer, were you able to go out and get about to go places with her?
I was not. I was hospitalized June 6th, and I was in the hospital for a little over 2 weeks. Again, I was pregnant, and I had complications during my pregnancy, and I was 6 months pregnant. And then I was on bed rest after I was released from the hospital.
When was the first time you met Millie Place and Laila Daniel?
I met them at my baby shower. It was the end of August 2015. Jennifer brought them with her, again, to my baby shower.
And was there anything noteworthy about how they got there? Did they get there?
Jennifer drove in her car by herself. I happened to be outside greeting guests. My host of the baby shower was running late, so my baby shower started about 45 minutes late, so I was outside trying to greet people that were coming in, and Jennifer came, and the girls were asleep in the back seat.
And what happened? How did they get into the house?
Jennifer woke them up, and they walked into the house.
And did she scold them at all for sleeping in the car?
No, ma'am, she did not.
Was there any distress or anger about them being asleep?
No, ma'am.
How were they at the party?
They were regular little kids. They were interacting with my family and my husband's family, and then they would go back and sit in Jennifer's lap. They played on Jennifer's cell phone, and they just acted like regular kids.
Tell me a little bit about when the next time it is that you saw the girls.
The next time I saw, or it was right after, I believe it was Millie's birthday party. It was a good bit of time between my baby shower and Millie's birthday. Again, I was really pregnant and sick, but I stopped by to give her a birthday present. I missed her birthday because I believe it was outside, and I wasn't supposed to be doing any strenuous activity outside. No.
Did you come and see Millie after her birthday?
I did.
And were you where was this that you came to?
I came to Jennifer's house.
And what did you find at Jennifer's house? How were the girls there?
They were fine. I mean, I was only there for about 20 minutes. It was to drop off the birthday present and leave, so it wasn't an extenuous amount of time. But the girls were acting like my two girls.
Were they running around? Were they using their legs and arms?
They were.
And did they seem comfortable in the house or not?
They seemed very comfortable.
And when is the final time that you had a chance to see these girls?
The last time I saw them was the day before Jennifer's birthday.
And tell me what that was for.
Jennifer and I, since we met on her birthday, we get together around her birthday every single year. That year, Jennifer, I believe, had a final the next day, so we weren't able to meet on her actual birthday. And with me having a brand new baby, we didn't want to go out, so I came to her house. Jennifer was cooking dinner. The one thing that does stand out is that Millie and Layla were outside playing while we were in the kitchen area. There's a big window and a foyer, a door that goes out to the backyard, and Millie and Layla were playing outside. And Jennifer and I happened to look up, and Layla and Millie were on a ladder that was going up a tree. And I think when and we kind of left it at that.
Did you do anything about? Was it a cut?
No, ma'am. It was just red at the time.
What did they do? Did she go lay down, or what did the girls do after they came into the house after falling from the ladder?
After they like got over the initial kind of shock or scare, they just continued to play like regular.
And tell me about Layla. Was she injured in any way?
I didn't see anything on Layla that, I mean, it was,
How high was it for Layla?
Layla was probably about the 3rd step up, and I think Millie was about the 4th or 5th step up.
And did Layla cushion Millie's fall at all? Did Millie fall on top of her?
No, she kind of, well, when Millie slid down, she slid to where like she was able to stand up, and Layla fell like on her bottom.
How did you find out about Layla's passing?
I just remember getting a phone call from one of the family members saying that something had happened. I really don't remember the exact details of it. I had extremely bad postpartum depression to the point where I did not leave my bed for a long time or extended periods of time. So that whole time.
During the time that you saw the girls, did you ever see, apart from this time with the ladder, did you ever see bruises on them that were out of the ordinary for?
Out of the ordinary, no.
Did you ever see any pattern bruises? And by that I mean bruises from an electric cord, from a belt, something that left a pattern on the skin.
Leading into witnesses that would be expert. I don't know who this witness does about that, or that would be an expert witness.
Sustained at the leading.
Did you see any pattern injuries on the child?
No, ma'am.
Did you see any injuries that looked like belt buckles?
No, ma'am.
Did you see any injuries that looked like belt strap or electric cord?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever have the girls to yourself?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever have them in the house where Jennifer was not right on top of them?
No, ma'am.
So Jennifer was always there?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you see Jennifer or Joseph spank or hit these children?
No, ma'am.
Did Jennifer and Joseph ever consult with you about illnesses with the girls?
No.
Did you ever see the girls with raccoon eyes, with black eyes all around, blackness all around?
No, ma'am.
I'll show you what I've marked as Defendant's Exhibit 141 and 142 and see if you can identify those pictures.
Yes, ma'am.
And what are they?
They're the ladder that Millie and Layla were playing on.
At this time, I'm the Tender Exhibit 141 and 142 in the record of mass production.
Can you check?
No,
Very many published.
Is that you saw Layla and Millie fall off?
Yes, ma'am.
And how long has that ladder been up there?
At least for 4 years. It was up in 2017. I had my baby shower, my second baby shower at Jennifer's house, and my oldest daughter was playing on it. So it's yes, ma'am.
Let me show you what's been marked at 141 and ask you if this is the ladder that they fell off of.
Yes, ma'am.
Any no further questions at this time?
Our witness for Ms. Andrews.
Good afternoon, Ms. Thomas.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Andrews. I have a few questions for you. You indicated you first saw the girls in August of 2015,
Yes, ma'am.
and that's when they came to your home.
No, ma'am. It was actually my mother-in-law's home.
It wasn't Jennifer's.
No, ma'am.
And after after you left your mother's and mother-in-law's home, did you go back to the Rosenbaum home?
No, ma'am, I went to my home.
So you don't know what happened at Jennifer's home after they returned to her home?
No, ma'am, that's fair to say.
And well, on August 25th of 2015, did you undress the girls?
No, ma'am.
So you only saw, you didn't see their buttocks or their backs or anything like that?
Not on the 25th, no, ma'am.
That was August 25th, you said?
The 23rd was the baby shower. They were wearing sundresses, I believe.
So you didn't see the buttocks or anything like that?
No, ma'am.
And you then indicated that you saw them next after Millie's birthday. How long after Millie's birthday?
It was the day after Millie's birthday.
So October 18th?
If that's the day after Millie's birthday, I'm not sure the exact date.
Well, let me clarify. Are you saying the day after Millie's birthday party or?
Her birthday party, yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we were talking about the same day. So you saw her the day after Millie's birthday party?
Yes, ma'am.
And that was at Jennifer's house?
Yes, ma'am.
And where was Layla when you were out there?
When I first got there, I believe she was like in their den area. They have a step down area, and I believe she was right there. And Millie had came to the door.
And was Layla wearing clothes appropriate for the weather?
Yes, ma'am.
And was Millie wearing clothes appropriate for the weather?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you take off their clothes on that day?
No, ma'am.
So you didn't see their buttocks?
Well, Layla was just wearing a diaper, but I didn't see underneath her diaper that day. No, ma'am.
And Millie, you didn't see her buttocks, her
No, ma'am.
back, anything like that? And you said you were there about 20 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
And the next time you saw the girls was November 16, 2015?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
that was at the Rosenbaum home?
Yes, ma'am.
And you said that Millie fell off the ladder and had some redness to her hip?
Yes, ma'am.
What hip was that?
I believe she was holding the ladder with her right hand, so I believe it was her left side, but I'm not sure on that.
Do you believe it was her left hip? And then describe for me what exactly.
No, I apologize. She was holding the ladder with her right hand, so it would have been her right hip as well.
So describe for me what you saw. So is it
Like if you're climbing up a ladder and you're holding the ladder with one hand and looking down, and you fall and you like slide with the ladder down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but
Like
I want to know what hip injury was on.
it would have been the right hip, the hand that or the side that she was holding on the ladder with.
And tell me about the injury that you saw.
At the time, it was just like red, and it was almost like I was looking at like not like when a bruise is formed, but you can tell it's red and it's going to form a bruise. If that makes sense.
Where was it exactly on the hip?
It was from about maybe an inch below her thigh, just to right at above her butt cheek, but on her hip.
You're going to have to maybe stand up so we can see what you're talking about.
Sorry, I just had surgery, so I'm in a lot of pain.
Sorry.
It was like from here to here.
Okay, and what did it look like?
It was red, and it definitely looked like it was going to form a bruise.
Was there any injury to her buttocks?
No,
Was there any injury to her arm that happened that day?
not that day, but she did have a bruise on her arm that day.
She didn't.
Yes, ma'am.
And what arm was that? Do you remember which arm?
I don't.
So the ladder was made of wood?
No, ma'am. It's a metal ladder.
Metal, but a hard substance, for lack of a better word.
Yes, ma'am.
So it wouldn't have wrapped around, the injury didn't wrap around Millie's body, did it? Like it wasn't on different planes of her body.
I don't understand. Like,
The injury was on the hip, there was nothing on the buttocks or the back.
no, not the back. No, ma'am.
I'm showing you what's in the United States Exhibit 80. Is this the, what you saw on Millie on November 16th?
It didn't look like that. No, ma'am.
And you said Millie fell from the 4th step,
It was about the 4th or 5th step up. Yes, ma'am.
and there was no reason on that day to take her to the hospital.
No, ma'am.
And then you said Layla fell on her bottom,
Yes, ma'am.
and Layla had a diaper on,
Yes, ma'am.
so she had a little cushion there. You can see so.
Yes, ma'am.
And other than that, Layla didn't have any other injuries to her
No, ma'am.
from the ladder?
No, ma'am.
So all the questions have been.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any objections to this meeting? All right, there is. And your next witness?
Officer Witt.
Officer Witt.
Officer Milano with Witt. And Witt Milano.
The last name is Witt, Officer Witt. Right here. Raise your right hand.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth,
I do.
please state your name and spell it for the record.
Danelle Nawara, Donellnawara.
Were you formerly Detective Officer, Detective Witt?
Yes,
Detective Noara, did you have occasion to work on the Millie Place and Laila Daniel case?
yes.
And what was one of the first duties you had with regards to that case?
The morning after the death of Layla, I always came into work early, and the secretary came to me and said that there's some family members that are at the precinct, and they need someone to talk to in reference to their child passing away the night before.
Did you talk to Ms. Tessa Clendenning?
I did.
And what did Ms. Tessa Clendenning tell you about how many daughters she had?
I believe at the time,
What did she tell you? What did she tell you about how many daughters she had?
I believe 3.
Did you ask her anything about why her children? Did you ask her anything about her children?
Yes, to tell me their ages, their birth dates, and such.
And what did she tell you about where the children were?
They were in DFACS care.
Did you ask her anything about DFACS care?
I don't recall.
Would it help you to take a look at your report?
Yes.
See if this refreshes your recollection.
She stated that she had a 2-month-old daughter that is in Clayton County DFACS care. And then I asked her why the children were in DFACS care. And she advised that she tested positive for meth.
Did she say anything else?
She advised that she would do anything to get meth.
Thank you. Did you, was one of your other duties to accompany Detective Thompson to the Lambert home?
Yes.
And did you, what did you do when you got to the Lambert home?
Introduced myself, and then we sat down at the family dining room table.
Who was at the table?
I believe it was me, Detective Thompson, Miss Lambert, and her sister.
Her sister.
Yes.
And what did Ms. Lambert have to tell you about with regards to Millie Place? Stop here a second.
Seems like a couple years ago. Sustained objection.
Did you talk to Millie at all?
Yes, very briefly.
Was she there?
Yes.
Did you take any report about, what was the purpose of you being there?
To speak to Miss Lambert.
About what?
The reason why they took the child from her originally and gave the children to the Rosenbaums.
Let me ask you this. Do you recall Ms. Lambert saying anything to you about what Millie had to say after she came back from the Rosenbaums?
I do not recall.
Do you recall anything about Ms. Lambert or her daughter telling you anything Kaya tell you about what Millie said as to how she got the bruises?
I don't believe I can't remember the exact wording, but that she was told that if somebody asked her, she fell down.
What else did she tell you about what caused the injury?
A bear scratched her,
A bear scratched her?
I believe.
That's what Kaya told you, Millie said?
Yes.
Thank you. This was that's all.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Paul.
Mrs. Dewar, I'm sorry.
Good morning, Mr. Ron.
Good morning.
Were you the lead detective on this case?
No.
You just happened to be in the office that morning when the family came in?
Yes.
And you had an opportunity to talk to Tessa
Yes.
in regards to the death of her daughter, Layla?
Yes.
And that led you to go to Ms. Lambert's home to talk to her and her daughter?
Yes.
And you ended up going there because Ms. Lambert had, I guess, called the police and told them that Millie was making disclosures while she was in their home.
Yes.
And that they were concerned and she would like the police to hear them from Millie.
Yes.
And when you went out, did you go out alone?
With Detective Thompson, which is the lead detective.
And while you were there, you spoke with Millie.
Yes.
Do you recall what Millie told you, if anything, about what happened to her in Rosenbaum's home?
I do not remember.
And then you spoke to Kaya.
Yes.
And Kaya explained to, let me ask you, before getting there, were you made aware that Kaya was the person that Millie had been making disclosures to?
Yes.
And how many cases of child abuse did you work as a detective?
At least 25 to 30.
And is it unusual for children to disclose, what we call delayed disclosure, have delayed disclosure, where they don't tell initially and then start to make disclosures?
Correct.
That's not unusual, is it?
No.
And that usually occurs once they get into a safe environment?
Yes.
And at this point, Millie was back with the previous foster parents before going to the Rosenbaums?
Yes.
And that's when she started to make these disclosures?
Correct.
And Kaya indicated to you that Millie told her that some of her bruises came from a bear scratching her?
Yes.
Did she also report that Millie indicated that she had been told to lie
Yes.
about how she received these injuries?
Yes.
And in regards to Tessa, let me ask you, did Kaya tell you who Millie indicated told her to lie about her injuries?
I do not recall that.
Okay, so you don't recall if she said it was the defendant, Jennifer Rosenbaum?
No, I don't remember.
And then in regards to Tessa Clendenning Daniel, you spoke to her?
Yes.
And she admitted that she had a meth problem?
Yes.
Didn't hide behind that at all?
No.
And you asked her why her kids were taken by defects?
Yes.
At any point, did she tell you it was because she was physically abusing her children?
No.
Did she ever tell you because I poured boiling water on my 1-year-old daughter and made her eat feces?
No.
She said because she had a drug problem, that's
She
why
had
her
a
kids were
drug
taken?
problem. Yes.
Nothing further.
All right, thank you. And you can step down. Any objection to this witness being excused?
Nothing further.
Okay, then you're free to go. Please call your next witness.
At this time, I would call Dr. Donna Resort.
We have Dr. Donna, and the last name is what?
Resort.
Resort. Raise your right hand.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
If you would state your name and then spell it for the jury.
Yes, ma'am. Donna Wizorek, and that's Donna, D-O-N-N-A, Wizorek, W-I-E-C-Z-O-R-E-K.
Dr. Resort, how do you make your living?
First of all, it's not doctor. So, I'm a licensed professional counselor.
Okay. Ms. Resort, how do you make your living?
I'm a part-time therapist for Health Connect America.
And what is your educational background?
I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I have a master's degree in community counseling.
And what kind of patients do you normally see? Is it run the gamut, or are you specialized in?
At the beginning, it was families, parents, maybe that had substance abuse issues, but most recently, over the last year, it's been children only.
Children only. And were you asked to see Millie Place?
Yes, ma'am.
And what were you asked to see Millie Place for?
In January of 2018, I was asked to provide counseling services for Millie. for adjusting to her new foster home. I think she had just been there about 4 weeks. And then shortly after that, before I had engaged with the family, I was asked to delay that because there was going to be a court hearing or trial. So I think it was July 2nd of 2018 before I met Millie for the first time.
Okay. And was one of the reasons that you were given for seeing Millie is to prepare her for court?
No, ma'am.
Okay. It was just to give her counseling.
Yes, ma'am.
And from which adult did you get the history about Millie from?
So because Millie had just been with Miss Harrell at that time, I think 7 months, I reached out to maternal great-grandmother, Mrs. Banks. I know where's Nana Banks, and I talked to her about the developmental milestones Millie had met when she was growing up and she was an infant and toddler, family health history, and what she knew about Millie moving around. I think Millie had been in, I think, if I recall, maybe 7 or 8 different placements by the time I started seeing her.
How many sessions did you have over what period of time?
So from July 2nd of 2018 to the last session, and I'm still seeing Millie, but we just, we put it off during this. It's a lot on the family. From July 2nd of 2018 to July 3rd of 2019, I met with either Millie and her new mother, or Millie's new mother, and I met in the 44 sessions total.
And when you say new mother, what's the name of the new mother?
The adoptive mother, Amanda Harrell.
Now, did you encounter any problems? Did you and Miss Harrell encounter any problems with Millie with regards to her to what she said? Was lying a problem?
That was one of the issues. Defiance, not doing what you're told, maybe being told to do something, clean up your room, and then saying that you had. A lot of children do that. Mm-hmm. So I think out of the 44 sessions, 3 of the sessions were directly related to maybe a lie that Millie had been caught in.
And was one of your goals to significantly reduce lying or reduce it altogether?
Yes, ma'am. All parents want to do that with their children. So yes, that was definitely one.
And was Millie getting in trouble in school for lying?
She did on, I know of 2 occasions. And I can refer to my notes if you need me to, or maybe you can.
As you feel.
Okay.
You need. There came a day where Amanda Harrell followed you out of the house. You came to the house, correct?
Yes.
You don't have the children come to you. You go to the children.
Yes, ma'am.
And her adoptive mother, Amanda Harrell, followed you out of the house one day. Is that correct?
Well, we typically have we typically process the session normally afterwards. Yes.
Did she have any concern about Millie's memories?
I think one particular incident I remember Millie trying to do a memory box, so I was talking to Millie about these are the things you need to collect for your memory box, things to put in to remember her sister. And Millie had brought up several photo albums, and she was going through it, talking about various biological family members. And I think Amanda was just a little concerned about her not fantasies, but she embellished the past. She said, she goes, I'm not sure all that's true. So, and I told her that, that was Millie's way of coping and healing, was to remember things positively.
And, but Miss Harrell told you she was concerned that some of the memories weren't true.
She was concerned that maybe some of the memories were not memories, but maybe things that she may have heard.
Let me show you, if I may,
Yes, ma'am.
Your record and see if this refreshes your recollection.
I'm going to object. I don't believe the witness has stated she doesn't remember.
She said she thought that it was. And are you sure that what that was her saying that she was concerned merely about the memories and not about whether they were true or not?
So in that particular instance, she was naming off different biological family members and talking in detail about them, and she's like, how could she, it was very vivid.
It was very vivid, and Miss Harrell was concerned that was not true, that she didn't have those memories.
She was,
If I can ask you, first of all, to answer yes or no, and then you can explain.
Yes, ma'am.
She has her own direct.
And I think
leading questions would be appropriate.
Well, it's true to be a question not appropriate, but at the same time, let's just start at the top over.
Yes.
Stop now. Okay, so when she asked the question, let her get out the entire question. And then, of course, I've asked counsel to allow the full response. and we'll go from there. Of course, we will have
In your note, that you made notes in this as you went along, correct?
Which date?
Well, did you make notes as you
Oh,
went
yes,
along?
ma'am. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
so for every session, you had a note.
Yes, ma'am.
And on 12/5/2018, did you make a note that Miss Harrell had followed the therapist out and had some concerns about memories Millie had? Millie described that she wasn't sure were true.
Yes, ma'am.
So you did not know whether what Millie said was true or not.
No, ma'am.
And in one of your notes, you also stated that she has a tendency to make up her own versions of past experiences.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was a concern as well.
Yes and no.
What was the effect of her exposure to her mother and great-grandmother? What effect did that have on Millie?
So I do not believe that Millie was having any visits with her biological mother. I believe that she may have been going to see her maternal great-grandmother either once or twice per month. And I think the concern there was Millie, maybe her behavior when she came home, because she was the only child with her grandmother, and then she came home and had to kind of reconnect into the larger family. And, she had her undivided attention. There were also some concerns about watching YouTube videos all day. I think I might have made that comment.
Okay. And when you say YouTube videos, you mean videos, whatever she found on YouTube?
Child appropriate, yes.
You made a note on February 6, 2019, did you not?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I believe.
I'll let you go.
Okay, thanks. May I refer to my notes?
Certainly.
And you said February 16th, correct?
February 6th.
6th? Okay. So I have two notes from February 6th.
Do you recall probing Millie to decipher real memories from those that she was hearing because of conversations she might have heard?
Oh, let's see here. Let me see. So the situation, yes, I do.
So you yourself were trying to determine whether she had heard something or whether she knew it herself?
Yes, because, can I explain?
Sure.
Because in this particular incident, it seemed highly unlikely that she would have known the details.
Now, in one instance, did Millie describe to you a nightmare when in fact she later admitted that she had heard others describe the incident of when her sister had died?
I do not recall that. If you can point to a specific note, that would be helpful.
On February 6th again, do you recall that she talked to you about a nightmare about her sister dying?
Do you know if this is the individual psychotherapy or the family counseling?
At the foster home, it's the individual, it's the
Okay.
client.
Okay. Yes, ma'am, that's true.
What is true?
Yes, she did say she had nightmares. And I can read it. The client reported that she had nightmares and was describing what she had seen in her nightmares, but later admitted, and this is back to the conversation she had at school, later admitted that she had heard others describe the incident of when her sister died in foster care.
So she did not know, those were not nightmares she had. She, in fact, was reporting what she had heard others say.
Yes, one comment in particular.
also noted that Millie may only remember some of the events due to discussions that were had in her presence.
Objection leading.
Did you say in your note that Millie may remember?
Your Honor, still leading. She's reading the record.
I'm reading from my notes.
Is there some reason that you're not asking her what happened on a particular date during the council?
No, there isn't. I can ask her what happened, but what happened on April 10th, 2019. What did you say in your progress narrative?
Repeat the date, please.
April 10th, 2019.
Yes, ma'am. Millie may only remember some of the events due to discussions. Now, this is my belief, not really anything she said. Millie may only remember some of the events due to discussions that were had in her presence before she moved to her adoptive home. Millie's behavior issues have reduced significantly, and she has developed a close and trusting relationship with her adoptive mother. And that's common with children, with the history of instability and neglect. They're moved quite a bit. She was moved quite a bit, so some of her memories, especially because she was so young.
On May 31st, 2019, did Miss Amanda Harrell communicate to you any concern about Millie?
Let me see. And you said May 22nd?
May 31st.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Harrell stressed the need for Millie to continue to receive therapy services until the conclusion of the trial. Ms. Harrell answered all questions, provided some of that. Let me move on to something more relevant. Ms. Harrell stated that Millie's lying has decreased, and it seems that instead she likes to create her own stories, fantasies. She seems to understand that this was a way that Millie protects herself in some ways due to her past trauma. So again, more positive stories. And I told Ms. Harrell that that's normal. That's her way of coping, and it's her way of healing.
Did you say positive stories or in your notes, or did you say stories/fantasies?
I said stories/fantasies.
Was there any concern, you mentioned earlier about Millie's behavior changing after she came back from her great-grandmother's. Can you explain that a little further?
Well, that's common in children. Common in children that may be in a divorced couple situation where they spend time with their non-custodial parent. But she would come home and maybe have a hard time settling down or following the rules, because the rules were different in Ms. Harrell's home than they were in Ms. Banks.
Did Miss Banks tell her she didn't have to mind?
Objection.
It's impeachment.
This is a,
Right.
you need to ask how many.
Did Miss Banks make any comment, did Miss Harrell make any comment to you? Let me start that. Did Miss Banks tell Millie that she did not have to mind?
Not
Is
that
that
I'm-
one of the problems? I'll move on. Were you aware that all of the foster families that Millie had been with had complained of Miss Banks telling Millie she didn't have to mind?
No, ma'am.
Now, did you try to get Millie to talk about the death of her sister?
So after Millie's, yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
And go ahead and explain.
So that originally was not my role with Millie. My role was to help Millie move forward, because in a trauma situation, it's usually addressed early on. And if the child doesn't exhibit some of the criteria for that, then we move on with the new issues like behavioral issues and adjusting to a home. But after Millie's incident at school, where she had an inappropriate conversation with a 7-year-old about the death of her sister, that triggered, it triggered thoughts for her, obviously, but it also brought to light maybe the need that if Millie's talking to a 7-year-old at school, that it might be more appropriate to speak to her school counselor, her adoptive mother, or her current therapist. So we did talk to Millie, and I did tell her that the next session we would try to talk about the past.
Did she have an easy or a hard time remembering the past?
Well, she was, it just depends on which aspect of the past. I mean, she gave me some pretty clear memories, and then she shut down.
On June 7th, 2019, did you write a note about that?
Yes.
And what did you write?
I said Millie mentioned several times during the game that she had a hard time remembering the past, and that she was distancing herself from the past. To be complete on that, Millie also talked about her biological family, but seemed to be distancing herself from the past.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Or any thoughts?
Good morning. So, just to be clear, was your diagnosis of Millie a compulsive liar?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Was the intention of your sessions to assist Millie with her transitions?
Yes.
Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about the lies that were told. Were they about brushing her teeth?
I believe maybe brushing her teeth, yes.
And did she tell you that one of the reasons that she lied was because she admitted in the past she was afraid of getting in trouble and getting punished or physically abused?
Can you point to a note on that? Because I do recall some of that.
That
but-
was December 19 of 2018.
Okay. Okay, let's see. Millie seemed to realize that it would have been better to tell the truth and that she would not have gotten in trouble. Millie admitted that in her past she was afraid of getting in trouble and getting punished or physically abused. Millie seemed to comprehend the concept of trust and forgiveness.
And did Millie have some issues with trust?
Yes.
And was that because of the amount of time she had been moved around?
Yes, ma'am.
So it was one of the issues that Amanda was addressing with Millie was having trust between the two.
Yes.
Okay. And is that something common you see with children in adoptive situations?
It's true with children in foster or adoptive situations. Yes.
You indicated on direct that there was 2 occasions where Millie got in trouble at school. So that was 2 out of all the years she'd been in school.
2 that I'm aware of from
your-
the year that I worked with
And what
her.
were those 2 occasions?
I believe one time Millie touched another student's property, and
What property?
maybe a backpack or something. She got in trouble. And Millie goes to a private school, so I think the rules are pretty strict there. So she got in trouble for that, and
On the first one, did that cause you any concern?
no,
Did that make you diagnose Millie as a compulsive liar?
absolutely not.
Is that pretty normal for a
That's
6-year-old?
definitely normal.
Okay, and let's go on to the second one.
Okay.
You said there was 2 lies. What was the second one?
At school?
Yes, that's
I think the other time that she got in trouble, and again, strict rules, she was told to do something, maybe move to a certain area or to finish an assignment before she was able to do something. And she stated that she had not heard the instructions. And the teacher was fairly, and again, this is hearsay somewhat, but according to the adoptive mother, the teacher was fairly certain that Millie had heard the instruction. So it was kind of selective hearing.
So did that mean Millie was a compulsive liar?
No.
Okay, is that pretty common for children her age,
It's pretty common for a first grader.
for a first grader? So nothing out of the ordinary?
No.
Okay. And on December 5th of 2018, you indicated that Amanda had some concerns about memories Millie described, and that Amanda wasn't sure were true. That doesn't mean they were lies, she just didn't know.
Right. And again, some children that come from instability and neglect, they love their parents unconditionally, or anyone that's cared for them. So they sometimes embellish stories to remember it positively.
So she was trying to make, Millie was trying to make people look better.
Millie's very positive.
So she wasn't trying to say negative things about her previous caregivers.
No.
And you indicated there was an incident at school when they were discussing death, and that brought up some concerns that Millie was thinking about her sister.
And
What was that trigger?
so the trigger, I believe, if I remember correctly, one of her classmates had a grandmother that had passed away, and maybe they talked about it in the service, maybe prayers. That typically happens in a Christian school. So Millie went out on the playground, and she was standing next to her classmate, and Millie wanted to be relevant. So Millie started talking about her sister's death. And as she talked about it, she described things, and some of the things could have been known to her age, but one thing in particular was something that we kind of felt that maybe Millie had heard over the years.
And what was that one thing?
That was something that maybe you would read on an autopsy about an organ and the condition of the organ when her sister passed away.
So Millie told this other 7-year-old that Layla's organs were split in two?
Yes, that's what she said.
And you feel that was maybe some information Millie got from somewhere else rather than her personally seeing the organ split in two?
Yes.
And were you aware that that was actually, the evidence has been that Layla's organs were split in two?
Yes.
Okay. So it wasn't about lying, it was about where she was getting that information.
Right. And Ms. Harrell and I discussed that because she knew that there was no way Millie knew that.
And that information might not be something you wanted a 7-year-old to actually know about what happened to her sister.
And definitely not something that you want to speak to with a 7-year-old classmate that doesn't understand that. That's disturbing.
So that was the kind of the context of that
Yes,
issue.
yes.
On January 21st, 2019, defense counsel indicated that you wrote Millie has a tendency to make up her own version of past experiences, and they asked you if it was concerning, and you said yes and no. Could you elaborate on that?
And
That was January 21st of 2019.
okay. So, in a positive way, it could be a defense mechanism to remember her biological family in a positive way. And no, because lying is not appropriate. So, but again, it's a coping mechanism for her. So,
And this had to do with her biological family?
I believe so. I believe so.
And when Millie did eventually, well, let me ask you this. Millie wasn't jumping to tell you about what happened to her in the Rosenbaum's home. Like, she didn't just come out and blurt things.
No,
She was pretty reluctant to even discuss it.
she didn't want to discuss it.
And when she did discuss it, she did describe being spanked.
Yes,
And she did describe having her arm twisted.
she did.
And she also stated that she and Layla used to get really get in trouble if they fell asleep in the car.
Yes, I do recall that.
And when Millie began recalling the day Layla died, she became sullen and her eyes watery.
She did.
And you also indicated that Millie's tendency to avoid talking about her past history. She has a tendency to avoid talking about her past history of neglect and instability.
Yes.
So it's difficult for her to talk about. And would you expect a child who experienced this trauma and seeing her sister die at the age of 4, and then at the age of 7 would remember everything that occurred?
No.
And once Millie learned that she was going to testify, how did she start acting?
She started talking about dreams. And one thing that was interesting to me, she had about 2 months before that, she had been really proud to show me herself riding her bike up and down the driveway and through her yard and the neighbor's yard. And one particular day, again, as we were getting closer to the trial, and we weren't really talking about the trial, we were talking about deep breathing and relaxing and telling the truth. She mentioned that she was scared to ride her bike on her driveway. And I was really surprised at that. And I said, Millie, you were just doing this a couple months ago. Why are you scared? And she said, because there are bad and good people in this world, and I can't tell the difference.
Thank you. No further questions.
Redirect.
Excuse
Any objections? Please call our next witness.
You call Dr. Sperry.
Dr. Sperry.
Morning.
Will you please raise your right hand and just small swear you?
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Dr. Sperry, if you would state your name and spell it for the jury.
Sure. My name is Chris Lee Sperry. My first name is spelled with a K, and my last name is spelled S-P-E-R-R-Y.
Dr. Sperry, what is your occupation?
I'm a physician and what's called a pathologist, but more specifically what's called a forensic pathologist or a medical examiner.
Tell us, if you would, where you have worked.
Sure. I've worked for the Office of the Medical Investigator at the state of New Mexico, which is their term for the State Medical Examiner's Office. And that was between, when I finished my training, excuse me, between 1985 and the end of 1989. And then I moved to Georgia and began working with the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office in Atlanta. And I worked there for 7.5 years and was promoted to Deputy Chief Medical Examiner during that time. And then in June of 1997, I was appointed as the first Chief Medical Examiner for the state of Georgia with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Division of Forensic Sciences, or the State Crime Lab. And I held that position as the chief for about 18 years and 4 months until I retired from state service in November 1st of 2015.
Dr. Sperry, while you were working as the lead medical examiner for the state of Georgia, did you have occasion to work for the defense as well?
Only when I was subpoenaed. One of the conditions of working for the state of Georgia and the state medical examiner's office was that neither I nor the other pathologists were allowed to provide testimony for the defense in criminal cases. In rare cases, rare situations, I might be subpoenaed by the defense for one reason or another, but beyond that, no, I did not engage in any criminal defense work.
You are now retired, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And tell us a little bit about your professional history, your education.
Sure. I graduated from college at the Kansas State College of Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, Kansas in 1975. I was born and raised in Kansas and lived all my early years there. Then I started medical school at the University of Kansas School of Medicine 6 weeks after I graduated from college, and that's in the University of Kansas School of Medicine in Kansas City, Kansas. I received my MD degree there in June of 1978. Then between July of 1978 and June of 1979, I was an intern at the Allentown Hospital in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And there I was what was called a general or rotating intern, that is delivering babies and helping with surgery and working in the emergency room and a variety of different things. And that was to get me prepared for the next 2 years, because between July of 1979 and June of 1981, I was a commissioned officer in the United States Public Health Service. I was stationed with the Indian Health Service branch on the reservation of the Red Lake Band of Chippewa Indians in Red Lake, Minnesota, which is way up north, about 50 miles from Canada. And there I was what was called a general medical officer, basically a family practice doctor, an emergency room physician, and I delivered babies. I delivered over 200 babies during my 2 years there and sewed up lots of injuries and saw countless children, just a general medical practice. But I was doing that as a commitment to pay back the United States government for the financial assistance they gave me to get through medical school. So I was a commissioned officer, and I was honorably discharged at the end of June of 1981. Then in July of 1981, I started a pathology residency at the University of New Mexico School of Medicine in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I finished that in June of 1985. And then between July and December of 1985, I was a fellow in forensic pathology with the Office of the Medical Investigator for the state of New Mexico. And when I finished that training at the end of 1985, that finished all of my formal training. I am board certified by the American Board of Pathology in anatomic pathology, clinical pathology, and forensic pathology.
Dr. Sperry, have you had occasion to give lectures or speak at conventions, publish articles? Can you tell us about that?
Well, yes, over my career I've been involved in a lot of teaching. I've written, I think, about a total of 50 medical articles that have been published in journals, mostly aimed at forensic pathology, or the type of work that I and my colleagues do. I've given lectures for years to all sorts of different groups, law enforcement, prosecuting attorneys, defense attorneys, DFACS workers, anyone who deals with the analysis or investigation of injuries of all sorts of different types. I've had a specific interest in childhood injuries, and many of the lectures and seminars I've given have focused on childhood injuries and things that are suspected possibly to be evidence of abuse or neglect. So I've done that and continue to do a few, not too many since I retired, but I will be actually giving or participating in a seminar and giving lectures at a meeting in Las Vegas in October. So I still do a few.
Dr. Sperry, can you tell us, was there any controversy surrounding your engaging in private consulting in forensic cases prior to you leaving the GBI?
I don't know if there was what you call controversy. This was one of the aspects of my employment as a chief medical examiner. Excuse me, I was permitted, allowed to do consultation work, which I did throughout the country. Just that the one restriction, as I mentioned earlier, was that I could not engage in providing expertise or consultation for the defense in criminal cases. So the vast majority of what I did was, as far as private work goes, related to civil type of work, medical malpractice, medical negligence sort of things, most commonly. And on occasion, I actually would be contacted by prosecutors' offices in other states and asked to serve as a consultant and occasionally to testify. So, well, like I said, that was permitted, it was standard, and there really wasn't any controversy internally anyway.
And did you retire honorably from the GBI?
Oh, yes. I chose, I made up the decision, excuse me, I made the decision to retire in the early part of October of 2015, and I got a nice, very, very deal congratulating me and thanking me for all my years of service and wishing me well in my retirement. So, and I have a pension just like any other retiree from the state. So I have full benefits, and I'm legitimately retired.
Dr. Sperry, have you been asked by myself to review the Millie Place and Laila Daniel case?
Yes.
And at this time, Your Honor, I would ask to qualify Dr. Sperry as an expert witness in forensic pathology.
Any objection? No objection. He's admitted to that was special.
You've examined all, have you examined, what have you examined?
Sure. Well, I've examined several hundred photographs of both children that were taken at various times after, well, specifically regarding Layla, in the emergency room or in the hospital where she was pronounced dead, and then photographs taken during the course of the autopsy. And with Millie, I've examined photographs that were taken during a physical examination that was conducted, I think, a few days later. I've examined photographs of the Rosenbaum's house, inside and outside, that were taken. I've examined, well, of course, the autopsy report, the various state crime lab reports dealing with different studies that were done, different forensic studies that were undertaken. We examined medical records for both of the children from a variety of different sources, pediatricians, DFACs, the Children's Hospital of Atlanta, some orthopedic records, so a variety of those. I've examined various DFACs records that were generated for both children over a period of time. I know I haven't seen all of the DFACs records that is relating to the very early, I would say early years of both children's lives, but at least things that were, as far as I can tell, more recent or more temporally or time related to when Layla died. Let's see what else I examined. Just I think photographs, documents. I've examined some, I've been furnished some police or law enforcement investigative reports and also interviews that they conducted with a wide array of different people that were, possibly might have had a role or had some information. And then I actually myself went to the Rosenbaum's house and sat and talked with Mr. and Mrs. Rosenbaum and looked at the inside of the house myself. And then, at really my direction, I asked her to show me what happened on the day when all this occurred, so that I could really see for myself what the relationship, really what she did and what was going on as best as she could recall, and the relationship inside the dwelling, especially the kitchen area and the living room, I guess I would say, where all of this took place up until the time that the paramedics got there and took the child.
Did you have occasion to look at the video of Jennifer Rosenbaum's statement?
Yes, I did.
And were you able to look at slides that Dr. Darisaw made? Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, as part of the autopsy examination, excuse me, Dr. Darisaw, who conducted the autopsy, took tissue samples from many different parts of the child's body, not only internal organs, but also portions of skin from areas that looked to be injured, primarily the appearance of bruises or contusions, and she took little tiny pieces to look at under the microscope after processing. She also took portions of bone from the right tibia or the shin bone, where there had been history of a recent fracture in that location, and from the left ulna, which is the main bone here on the outside, or I should say, it's really the outside of your arm, where a fracture was found after the child had passed away, and then x-rays disclosed evidence of a break in that bone. And then the right eighth rib also in the back, there was a healing fracture, as it turned out, that also had not been ever detected prior to that time.
Dr. Sperry, after reviewing all the documents, after viewing the video and looking at the slides under the microscope, did you come to a conclusion about how Laila Daniel sustained the injuries that she sustained?
Yes.
And what was that conclusion?
Well, in my opinion, Laila Daniels sustained a multiplicity of injuries, both on the outside of her body, various bruises and scrapes in a lot of different places, but internally also there was evidence of injury involving the pancreas and the liver and the diaphragm and really kind of the upper central part of where your abdomen is in the lower chest. And after looking at all of that and looking at everything under the microscope, and then, of course, seeing her statement and then visiting her house and actually having her demonstrate to me, to show me what she did. That was my instruction. Just show me what happened. My conclusion was that all of these injuries were sustained during a very panicked, frenzied attempt to try to save Layla's life after she appears to have choked on some chicken that she had stuck in her throat. And that as Ms. Rosenbaum started, noticed that Layla was choking, and then started trying to dislodge this, but without success. The amount, frenzied is probably the best word that I could use, that she was doing anything that she could to try to dislodge this chicken and save the girl's life, and along the way inadvertently caused injuries to Layla's body on the outside and on the inside because of her intense efforts at trying to save the child's life.
Did you bring pictures with you?
Yes.
Thank you.
These are at least the ones.
I'm going to show you Let's start out by talking about the outward injuries, exterior injuries. I'm going to mark this as Defendant's Exhibit 143 and ask you to...
Ms. Long, question. I take it this is going to take a while.
Yes.
Why don't we take a 15-minute break and then we'll come back?
I'm going to show you what I've marked as Defense Exhibit 143 to 165 and have you look at these pictures yourself and see if you can identify them generally for us.
Yes, these are all photographs of Laila Daniel, and it's a mixture of photos that were taken on, I believe, November 17th at the emergency room, and then on November 20th at the autopsy examination.
This time I would tender 143 to 165 into the record.
Okay. 133 to 165.
Let's start out with the contention, was the child starved in any way?
No, I do not think there's any evidence of starving or malnutrition, no.
Did you consult Dr. Darisaw's report, and were you aided in any way by that?
Well, yes, Dr. Darisaw really described her as, to make sure, well-developed and well-nourished, and I agree with that. I thought the child basically looked fine as far as nutritional status was.
Now, let's talk about the bruising on the outside of Layla's body first. Let me show you, if I may finish, Your Honor. I'm going to show you Defendant's Exhibit 148, if we could have the lights. What are we seeing here?
Well, the scalp has been shaven, and there is distinct.
Okay. Sorry about the jury. How is he doing? Let's have the jury step out, please.
Give me a hand here. Hold on. Hold it. Bad back.
Are you okay?
I'm not hurting anymore. All right, so, yeah, I think I should be okay. That's booby trap.
Okay. Well,
Sorry about that.
do you need a minute?
I think I'm okay.
You're okay.
Yeah.
Let's bring the jury back.
Nothing acutely hurt.
Let's get started.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, we're ready to proceed.
Let's try this again. All right. This is, what number is this, ma'am?
This is number 148.
Okay. Number 148 is a photograph of Layla's head at the autopsy after the scalp has been shaven. And there is, it looks to be a contusion or a bruise here, and another one here. This is on the back of the head. You can see the child's ears. Then there is a little mark there that looks to be just an incidental, a cut made during the process of shaving the scalp. It occurs very frequently just in shaving the hair like this. But in and of itself, that doesn't, the cut doesn't mean anything. It's not an injury.
Is that, can you tell us how customarily at the GBI what is the utensil that's used to shave heads?
Well, yes, a scalpel. Really, it's just a regular curved scalpel, and it takes some practice, but this is how the head is typically shaved. And it takes a little time, but again, with time and practice, it's easily done. But still, inadvertently, there can be just small cuts that are made on the scalp as a part of this process.
And you see a contusion on the top of the head.
Yes.
So, and what do you make of that?
Well, it's a bruise, and I believe that one, if I recall correctly, there was a microscopic section of that that showed some evidence of inflammation. So this would mean it was somewhere perhaps in the maybe 6 to 12 hour range, possibly more than that. I mean, I looked at the section myself, so it was not 2 or 3 or 4 days old, but it was also not very, very fresh either. There were some very early healing changes. And that was one of the few bruises that really exhibited any healing of the multiple ones that were seen on her body, and which also Dr. Darasaw took sections from.
I'm going to show you what I marked as Defendant's Exhibit 158 and ask you if that gives you a better view of those scalpel marks.
Yes, it certainly does up here at the top. Those are, again, just inadvertent cuts that are made on the scalp with the scalpel, and they don't mean anything. There is a little interrupted scrape here on the side of the head, and well, I think we'll talk more about this area here on the ear.
As we go along, yes. And I'm going to show you 160, Defendant's 160.
Yeah. 160 is the right side of the scalp, and also I think now you can see where the contusion is, but also you can see the small cuts that were made during the course of shaving the hair. And again, they're not injuries; they're just part of incidents during the autopsy, just in the process of shaving the hair.
And that bruise is not on the top of the head, is it?
No, it's really on the back. In fact, you can see where the ears are located, so it's really on the back of the head and not on the top.
And finally, I'll show you Defendant's Exhibit 165.
Yes, 165 really is a top view looking down. You can see the right ear here as well, but the small cuts that were made along the way, just in doing the shaving, that's probably the best photograph that shows all of them. And again, those are not injuries that were caused by anyone. They're just part of what can happen during the autopsy examination.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 143.
Yes.
Can you tell us what we're seeing?
Sure. This is a photograph taken again at the autopsy. Now, the child died, on November 17th. The autopsy was done on November 20th, about 3 days later, which is okay. There's nothing untoward about that whatsoever. But in that time, changes can occur in the way that contusions and bruises look. There are a cluster of bruises here on the central part of the back, going a little bit to the left, and then the left lower back as well, to a lesser extent the right. But they have especially down here, it has a very uniform appearance. And it's known in forensic pathology that over the passage of time, that bruises can change in their appearance just because blood will seep to the surface. In fact, years ago, before I would say we all started doing very extensive dissections of the skin, such as Dr. Darasaw did, it was very typical to hold the body for 2, 3, even 4 days and look at it each day, because you could see changes in contusions that were not apparent before, or even bruises that you could not see initially that were, say, rising to the surface just from diffusion of the blood. But the appearance does change, and this is not the same in the way it looks as compared with the photographs that were taken of the child in the emergency room.
Let me show you, see if I can put these two together and ask you describe the difference between them.
Yes.
And this is, just for the record, 149.
I think once you put these side by side, the appearance is the change in the appearance is fairly striking. You can see the general outlines of the areas of contusion, but here from the emergency room photographs, the bruises, many of them are much more discrete. There's individual contusions, individual bruises, as compared with what it looks like over here, which looks like just one large contusion, which really it's not. It is multiple small ones that over the course of 3 days, after she passed away, just the appearance changed. In fact, the color on the skin itself changed, and this kind of dark reddish appearance is a little bit of drying as well, which is something that happens especially in small children where the skin is very, very thin. So the appearance is much different. And as far as really assessing the nature and potential causes of bruises. The photograph here on the right, which is again from the emergency room, is I would say more helpful because it shows more individual, well-defined bruises in specific locations as compared with the photograph on the left where blood has diffused out into the tissues and really obscured the individual characteristics. It's just not as easy to, I would say, interpret as well with the passage of time.
Can you tell us what would cause, in your opinion, in your professional opinion, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, what caused these injuries on the child?
Well, in my opinion, these injuries were caused by Ms. Rosenbaum, who was pounding on Layla's back as Layla was choking and not breathing. Initially was flailing around and then stopped flailing. And Ms. Rosenbaum was trying to pound on the child's back to dislodge the bolus or the chunk of chicken that was stuck in her airway. And in doing so, Ms. Rosenbaum left these bruises behind. There's a scrape there. It's harder to tell, but that could readily come from a fingernail here. But you can see, again, 3 days later, it looks much bigger. It's, the characteristics of the contusions are less distinct. Here you can see individual marks that very readily could be fingers or even knuckles from, again, pounding on the child's chest, literally, without mincing words. What I appreciated was this was a repeated attempts to pound on the child's chest to remove this piece of chicken that was blocking her airway.
Is this the chest or the back?
Well, I'd say chest generically. This is her back, of course, to pounding on the back, which is known and understood. I mean, that's something that is attempts are made to get something out of the airway by pounding on the back. Typically, if the child's upside down, just so it will drop out. But anyone, all of us in the room here have choked on something somewhere along the line, and someone will come and kind of pound on your back to try to get it loose so that you stop choking and start breathing again. And that's the individual small bruises really come from, as I said, fingers, perhaps knuckles, in trying to pound on her back to get this chicken out of her throat.
And is that pounding on the back part of Heimlich maneuver or not, or something else?
Well, it's part. The Heimlich maneuver specifically has to do with pushing on the upper front of the abdomen, just below the rib cage, to try to create pressure inside the stomach and the esophagus, and possibly the chest, to hopefully push this piece of whatever is blocking the airway to make it pop out or come loose. But one of the initial things to do if you think someone is choking on a piece of food, and you can tell that because they stop talking and they're not making noises and start flailing around in a panic, is to pound on the back initially to see if that alone will dislodge the food, the piece of stuff that is blocking the airway. And if that doesn't work, then you move on to the compression of the front of the stomach.
Tell us, if you would, Dr. Sperry, what is the difference between the way a Heimlich maneuver should be performed on a child and the way it should be performed on an adult?
Well, the difference primarily is because has to do with the child's size. And in an adult, with one adult working on another adult, what you're supposed to do is really embrace around the chest area and put the fists right below the breastbone and push in, or pull in actually, very forcefully and rapidly, again, to try to expel the food. With a child, it's different in the sense that they're much, much smaller, and you may do things like sit and have the child sitting in your lap, or perhaps kneel behind the child, just in order to gain access to the lower part of the chest and the upper abdomen to pull against the child's stomach, again, to dislodge this. But it has to do really with the difference in size between an adult and a small child, and then the positioning that can be undertaken to, again, the ultimate goal is to compress the upper abdomen and lower chest to make this food pop out.
What is the result of using adult Heimlich on a child? What is the concern about doing that? Why don't we do that?
Well, the concern is that children are much smaller. They're much more delicate. You have a lot of organs, come in a small place, small area inside of the abdomen and the chest, and you can't use as much force. With an adult, everything is bigger. More force is necessary, really, to expel the food. But if that amount of force is transferred into a small child, the potential for injuries to be caused on the inside of the child's body is very real. Just because if you're using the same forces as you would in trying to alleviate an airway obstruction in a child, or in an adult, excuse me, you use those same forces, you can inadvertently cause injury on the inside of a child's body just through that effort without knowing that this is happening.
Let me show you what I marked as Defendant's Exhibit 147 and tell us about a light that is kind of shining on it. Tell us what we're looking at here and what it means to you, Bill.
Well, we're looking at the lower back area. There's, excuse me, some small little scrapes with a larger scrape, and then scattered contusions, bruises scattered around here. And you can make out individual detail in the bruises here. It's not just one unbroken bruise. It's a lot of little ones that are beside each other, sometimes arrayed in kind of lines or little groups, and individual small bruises. I mean, that's the nature of what the injuries are that we're seeing, is a number of small little bruises that are clustered together. And this is, when you see small bruises or see this kind of clustering, the thought again is fingers, is knuckles, is individual parts of a hand that would cause impact injuries, impact bruises to the skin, and the little scrapes. It's hard to tell just from this alone. This could come from if the child is laying on something while CPR is being performed and something is scraping the back. Potentially, especially with little small abrasions like this, these could well be fingernail marks as well. Again, that's as part of pounding or striking the child's back, once again, to dislodge the food that's blocking the airway.
Dr. Sperry, does it concern you any that the bruises are this low on the body? What does that mean?
What it means to me really is resuscitative maneuvers being performed by someone, a layperson who has no training at all on exactly what to do and how to do it, coupled with panic, with a situation where no matter what is being tried, the child still can't breathe, and the blockage is still there. And as this becomes chaotic, even in medical situations where there's trained individuals involved, if the desired outcome, that is getting the person resuscitated, is not happening, then sometimes, I mean, literally chaos ensues. It can be sort of controlled chaos, but everyone is trying to do the best they can to get the person resuscitated. And injuries happen just because of the level of intensity. So if you take someone who has no medical training whatsoever, who is faced with the situation of a child suddenly choking on a piece of food, then the goal is to try to get that out so the child will breathe, and nothing is working. And despite escalating and moving from one thing to the next, this, as I said, an incredibly panicked, chaotic situation is not surprising whatsoever. It's terrible.
Let me show you what I've marked as Defendant's Exhibit 146. And again, the light that's shining is kind of, but see if you can tell us what that bluish coloring on the base of the thumb is.
This right there, yes. The reason I selected that photo is just the lighting is not terribly good. The bluish coloration at the base of the thumb is not a bruise. That's normal in anyone who's deceased. The thumb muscle is very thick in this area, and there's a lot of blood, and as a consequence of this, it can look blue. In fact, I don't know, it's hard to tell even from across the room. You can see, my thumb is kind of blue there. It's just how God built us. It's how the muscles are structured and the thick muscle in that area. And it's, it should never be mistaken for a bruise of some sort, because it's just a natural part of the body, and it's more enhanced after someone passes away.
Let me show you what I want with 159 and see if that gives a better view of that.
Yeah, it does. It does. You can see this area, this blue discoloration here, that's kind of ill-defined. But that's a normal post-mortem finding. As I said, it's normal in someone who is not dead. So I can show you my hands. You can see the bluish discoloration, but it should never be mistaken for an actual bruise.
I want to ask you, Dr. Sperry, looking at Defendant's Exhibit 161, what could have caused these bruises on the legs of Layla?
Okay. Now, this also is useful. We can talk about this a bit. I'm not going to belabor it, but this is a photograph of the autopsy examination. And now that you've seen the individual bruises that were very readily apparent from the hospital, you can see how the appearance has changed over the passage of, well, from the 17th to the 20th of November. And this is, again, just what happens after someone has died. This is an artifact, we call it. It's something that is, the changes are created but just by the fact that the child is deceased and the blood spreads out a little bit more. Now, with that, looking at these bruises, individual bruises down here on the thighs, part of what Mrs. Rosenbaum describes in the way that she was trying to hold the child in order to do the Heimlich maneuver as best as she understood. There were times where she was holding the child's legs or had the child's arms, I think, as I can recall, sort of under her arms and holding. Excuse me.
I would object at this point that this is hearsay. Response?
Your Honor, I will tailor it. Given what you saw on the video of Jennifer's statement, what can you tell us about what those markings are on the child's legs?
Okay, yeah, I'll abbreviate it. I mean, I think these markings are related to the positions that Ms. Rosenbaum had, where she had her hands at different places at different parts of Layla's body during the complex maneuvers that she was undertaking, again, to try to dislodge the blockage in the child's throat. She was trying one thing, and the next, and the next, and as I said, it was very disorganized and chaotic, but the child was dying in front of her.
At some point in time, let me withdraw that. Let me show you what I've marked as Defendants 145. Tell us what we are seeing right here.
Sure. This is a photograph of the front of the abdomen of Layla's body, and then there are some areas of bruising, some with some little tiny scrapes along the, just kind of above the hip bone area on the right and left side, just on the lower abdomen sides.
What does that come from?
That comes from gripping that is holding the child's abdomen with Ms. Rosenbaum behind the child and reaching around to hold the abdomen, again, as part of the maneuvers that she was attempting to try to dislodge the blockage from the child's throat. And in fact, there are better pictures, but there's somewhat of a linear character with some little scrapes that probably appear to come from fingers and some little scrapes from just fingernails, holding onto the child, again, trying one thing after another to remove this blockage, and not having success, and again, the panic and the chaos just intensified.
Let me show you 156, Defendants 156, and see if that gives you a better view of what you're talking about.
Well, it really does. This is the left abdomen, the pelvis is kind of right around in here, and you can see from the previous photo where the heart monitor pad was. And here's these two linear bruises with some little tiny punctate scrapes or pinpoint scrapes, and this looks like finger marks with maybe some fingernails. As I recall, that actually was described by the first responders, these particular injuries, as looking like finger marks on the child's sides of the abdomen.
Defendants 162. What are we looking at here?
Well, we're looking at, a similar view to what we saw before of the markings on the right. You see her left and her right side of the abdomen, just above the pelvis on the sides. And again, I think this goes along with what Ms. Rosenbaum was trying to do, holding the child, again, while trying everything that she thought she could do in order to compress the abdomen, to stabilize the child, while she's trying to get the blockage out of the child's throat.
Stop here for a minute and talk about bruising, Dr. Sperry. And you have can you tell us a little bit about the bruising? Can you tell bruising date by color?
Okay. Well, it is not possible, that's a big word in forensic pathology, it is not possible to accurately tell the age of a bruise by looking at its color alone. And we will experience people, including myself, will be wrong far more than we're right as far as looking at a bruise or a contusion and trying to determine how old it is. There are a couple of things that seem to be fairly standard. Somewhere around maybe the 12th to 14th day, maybe there's oftentimes a yellowish halo around a healing bruise. That seems to be a fairly reliable marker of sort of time frames. But unfortunately, with the naked eye, you cannot look at bruises. I mean, the best people that I know of cannot look at a bruise and tell you how old it is, or really tell which ones are necessarily older or younger than others. there's so many factors involved. The skin color of an individual, whether child or adult, whether they're very light-skinned or African-American or somewhere in between. And a bruise really is bleeding in the skin and the tissues beneath the skin. So the amount of bleeding is incredibly variable. I mean, not every bruise is the same as every other bruise. There's so many factors involved that you just can't really tell. And certainly you cannot reliably tell by looking with the naked eye.
What must you do in order to age an injury that has bruised up?
In someone who's living, it's very, very difficult. Sometimes photographing bruises over the course of days just to see how they mature and at what point maybe the yellow coloration starts to show. Again, gives an idea, but you can see that it's very vague. And it's not uniform, I guess is the way to put it. It's not scientifically reliable. Now, something that we as forensic pathologists have the ability to do with someone who is deceased is we'll take little tiny pieces of bruises and look at them under the microscope. And by doing that, we'll see the degree of healing, the body's response to bruises, and how long perhaps this healing has been going on. But again, with the understanding that still is very, very imprecise. It is not precise at all. For instance, a fresh bruise, or say a bruise that under the microscope has evidence of some bleeding, but no other healing changes, I can't tell you whether that bruise is 5 minutes old or 5 hours old. It usually takes at least about 6 hours or so of life, of survival, for the healing changes to begin to be seen in a bruise under the microscope. And then things progress, but still being able to narrow it down to a specific day or a specific hour is really just impossible. So that's, microscopically, we can do better than with the naked eye, but there's still some fairly severe limitations.
And with regards to microscopic examinations, were you able to determine anything about the age of any of these injuries?
Yes.
What did you determine about the body?
Well, the vast majority of the bruises that were on the Layla's body surface that Dr. Darrow sampled were recent in the sense that there was bleeding, but no evidence of any, we call it a cellular reaction, no inflammation. In other words, no evidence that the bruise had been there long enough for the body to start the healing process. So these could be anywhere from minutes to maybe 5, 6 hours potentially, anywhere in there. There were very few bruises that had some early healing changes with some inflammation that was going on that would, from what I saw looking at the tissue slides, put them up in the maybe 6 to 12 hour range, possibly longer. Again, you can understand it, this still is not precise. And since everyone is different, we can identify different stages, but as far as definitively saying that some bruise is 11 hours and 13 minutes old, it's just impossible to do.
Looking at Defendant's Exhibit 157, what are we looking at here?
Oh, that is, I think, well, that's the lower, yes, I think the lower right abdomen. I think, yes, there's an abrasion here. This is just above the pelvis, and then here's some. I think you can see now that the color alone just is not enough to really be able to make a distinction. And they generally look like finger marks to me.
Ask you about this mark, and it's hard to see this white band below the belly button.
Yes.
What is that?
Well, frankly, it looks like just a pressure mark to me. That, in other words, there's something that was putting pressure against the child's abdomen at some point after or around death, or even after death. So the blood is, not within the central area, but it's around the periphery. Now, I know it's been described. I've looked at all the photographs. I've looked at them repeatedly. There's descriptions that this seems to be a scar. It doesn't look like a scar to me, and I've seen an awful lot of scars. And at the same time, another thing to do, if there was question at all, the thing to do would be to take a small piece of that and look at it under the microscope. Because if it truly is a scar, there are going to be changes, old healing changes in the skin and the tissues underneath the skin that would be very, very obvious. But that was not done. It's just the visual appearance. So I think the conclusion is very limited because it's only based upon what it seems to appear to be visually.
And do you see that mark again on 162? Is that a better view of that mark?
Yes, it's right in through here. It's very uniform. It's very well defined. I think there's a little area of interruption, as I recall, along here. So that's the best I can tell you, except that just to say that there's no, other than the color change, I don't see any line of demarcation. I mean, any difference, I should say, in the skin appearance from one part to the next. Scars usually raised in some way. They're oftentimes very irregular on the inside, but there's a tangible difference to the skin and its texture with a scar, and it's in an unusual place. And I see that the fact that it's so uniform really doesn't disturb me at all as far as being some sort of remote injury of some nature.
I want to talk to you about the ears.
Yes.
I'm going to show you what I've marked as 154 and 155. And see if you can tell us what we are looking at and why it's significant.
Yes. This is, I keep looking down here, I'm not going to do that again. This is the left ear. And you can see these little lesions here that are red, but they're irregular and have some crustiness to them. It looks like the hair has been pulled away. Here, the hair is actually stuck to parts of these lesions that are interrupted. This is what impetigo looks like. Impetigo is a superficial skin infection caused by the staph bacteria. It's very common in children, and it can be spread from one child to the next, and they can spread it on their own body. But the crustiness with the hair sort of stuck in here, that's very typical for what impetigo looks like, especially in a child like this who has longer hair and who scratches the area, and the hair, it weeps and the hair gets stuck to it. So that's pretty typical for impetigo. That's not an injury of some sort.
Let me show you what I've marked as 151, and do you see any more impetigo here?
Yes. One of the hallmarks of impetigo, as I mentioned, is that children will scratch these areas and then they'll pick their nose or put their hands on their face and spread the bacteria of other places. And these little lesions right here on the nose, that's where children will spread the impetigo to. They pick their nose, they spread the infection there, and then you see these little red marks as a consequence. And I don't know of another, once I saw the impetigo on the ear, then the things on the nose to me became much more, I can see the explanation for those, because otherwise I don't know what else would do that. But the impetigo is a definite real thing.
I'll show you. Just
Go ahead and step out for a second, see if we can resolve this situation. Okay. Are you still doing all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Let's see what this is.
Yeah, is it-
Here. Do we know if this is related to the media? Is it the possibility that we have these two microphones so close together?
Not very long.
Getting a feedback
Let's
loop.
see if that's the issue. If it's something else, we'll have to deal with it. I don't know. Something that can be done with this soundboard over here. And maybe we'll turn it around. No problem.
This comes from
From the what?
the internal.
Internal?
Yes, from speech system.
Soundboard.
Yeah.
You need to get ready. Okay. Gotcha. We're going to go ahead and take a short break. We'll have the tech people come up here and see if it's the soundboard that's causing it. And let's take, let's see. Why don't we just give everybody an early lunch and come back at 1 o'clock? That way we can take our time and work through this. Hopefully our system is working at 1 o'clock.